On the darkest corners of the galaxy, where hope dies and civilizations fall to their knees, there exists a legend whispered among the survivors. They speak of a species so relentless, so impossibly stubborn, that they will cross the void itself to honor a promise made to strangers. Most dismiss these tales as fantasy, until the day their skies burn with the fury of those who refuse to let evil triumph. This is the story of the day the galaxy learned that when humanity gives its word, not even death itself can stop them from keeping it. The morning sky above Kepler. 442b burned crimson as the Zephyrian warships descended through the atmosphere like hungry predators. Commander Tale Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the planet's surface grow larger through the viewport. Below, he could see the sprawling cities of the Altarians, their crystalline spires reaching toward the heavens, in what would soon prove to be a futile gesture of defiance. "Status report," Vex commanded, his voice carrying the cold authority of someone who had overseen the destruction of 17 worlds. "Surface defenses are minimal, sir," reported his tactical officer. A scarred Zephyrian whose left eye had been replaced with a glowing cybernetic implant. "Their planetary shield grid is outdated, at least 3 generations behind our current technology. Their fleet..." He paused, checking his readings again. 12 ships total, all of them civilian transports hastily retrofitted with mining lasers. Vex allowed himself a thin smile. The Altarians were known throughout the galaxy for their pacifist nature, their dedication to art, philosophy, and scientific advancement. They had never needed a military because they had never posed a threat to anyone. That peaceful nature had made them wealthy through trade and diplomacy, but it would also make their conquest embarrassingly simple. "And their distress call?" Vex asked. "Broadcast on all emergency frequencies 3 days ago, sir. Standard coalition protocols. They're calling for immediate assistance from any allied forces in the sector. Any responses?" The tactical officer's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. "The nearest coalition fleet is 6 months away at best, sir." The message was more of a formality than a genuine plea for help. Vex nodded. The Altarians knew they were doomed, but their culture demanded they follow proper procedures, even in the face of annihilation. It was almost admirable in its futility. On the planet's surface, the evacuation sirens wailed through the capital city of New Harmony. The Altarians moved with practiced efficiency despite their obvious terror. Their tall, slender forms seemed to glide rather than walk as they herded their young toward underground shelters that everyone knew would provide only temporary protection. Dr. Elena Vas Altair, the planet's chief xenobiologist, stood in her laboratory watching the chaos unfold in the streets below. Her hands trembled as she carefully sealed her life's work into a series of quantum storage devices. Decades of research into cross-species genetic compatibility, studies that could revolutionize medicine across the galaxy, reduced to a handful of crystalline cubes small enough to hide in her clothing. "Elena, we need to go," called her assistant, Jurek, from the doorway. His normally blue-tinted skin had gone pale with fear. "The transport to Shelter 7 leaves in 10 minutes. "Almost finished," she replied, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Elena had lived through the War of the Broken Stars as a child, had seen what the Zephyrian Empire did to worlds that resisted them. They didn't just conquer planets, they made examples of them. Every living being would either be enslaved or killed, depending on their usefulness to the Empire. As she sealed the last storage device, a new sound cut through the air, not the wailing of sirens or the distant rumble of approaching ships, but something else. A deep, rhythmic thrumming that seemed to come from the planet's upper atmosphere. "What is that?" Jurek asked, pressing his face against the laboratory's reinforced window. Elena joined him, her eyes scanning the blood-red sky. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just the ominous shapes of the Zephyrian fleet beginning their final descent. But then, at the very edge of her vision, she noticed something that shouldn't have been there. A series of tiny, bright specks falling through the atmosphere at impossible speeds, their trajectory too controlled to be meteors, too small to be ships. Aboard the Eternal Dominion. The sensor operator's head crest flared in alarm. "Commander, we're detecting multiple objects entering the system. They're moving fast, sir. Very fast." Vex turned from his contemplation of the planet below. "Clarify very fast, Lieutenant." "They're traveling at approximately 60% light speed, sir, and they're decelerating at rates that should liquefy any biological crew." "How many objects?" "Difficult to determine precisely, sir. The energy signatures are unusual, but preliminary scans suggest at least 500 individual craft." Vex felt a cold knot form in his stomach. No known species in the galaxy could build ships capable of those velocities, and certainly none that could protect organic crews from that kind of deceleration. Origin? Unknown, sir. They're broadcasting no identification signals, but... The lieutenant paused, his voice taking on a note of confusion. Sir, they're broadcasting something on the Alterian emergency frequency. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled to life, filled with static and the distortion that came from high-speed communication through dense atmosphere. But underneath the noise, a voice emerged. It spoke in accented galactic standard, the words crisp and clear despite the interference. This is Colonel Sarah Chen of the Terran Expeditionary Force, broadcasting to Kepler. 442b. Alterian forces, we have received your distress call. Hold your position, cavalry's coming. The bridge fell silent. Vex stared at the speaker as if it had just spoken in an ancient, dead language. Terran, he whispered. Did that transmission say Terran? Every Zephyrian on the bridge knew the stories, though most dismissed them as propaganda or myth. Somewhere in the galaxy's outer spiral arm, so the tales went, was a species that called itself human. They claimed to come from a world called Terra, or Earth, and they were supposedly even more warlike than the Zephyrians themselves, but no one had ever seen verifiable proof of their existence. Most xenobiologists dismissed them as a coalition fabrication, a boogeyman story designed to keep aggressive species in line. Sir, the sensor operator called out, his voice tight with disbelief. The objects are beginning atmospheric entry. They're... He paused, checking his readings again. Sir, they're not slowing down. On the planet's surface, Elena and Jorik watched in amazement as streaks of brilliant white fire began cutting across the sky. The objects were moving so fast they left contrails of superheated atmosphere in their wake, creating a network of glowing lines against the crimson backdrop of the Zephyrian fleet. Those aren't ships, Jorik whispered. They're too small, and nothing could survive atmospheric entry at that speed. Elena felt her breath catch as understanding dawned. They're not ships, she said quietly. They're pods. Drop pods. The first wave of human drop pods struck the planet's surface with the force of kinetic weapons, each impact creating a small crater and a cloud of vaporized rock and metal. But instead of destruction, what emerged from those craters was something the galaxy had never seen before. The humans who climbed out of the drop pods were unlike any species the Alterians had encountered. They were shorter than most galactic races, their skin ranging from pale pink to deep brown, their hair a variety of colors that seemed to defy biological logic. But what struck Elena most was their equipment. These weren't the sleek, energy-based weapons favored by most advanced civilizations. The humans carried projectile weapons that looked crude by galactic standards, but the way they moved, the way they immediately began establishing defensive positions and coordinating with each other through rapid, efficient hand signals, spoke of a military precision that was anything but primitive. All Alterian forces. The voice of Colonel Chen echoed across the planet's communication network, now broadcasting from ground-based transmitters. This is Terran Expeditionary Force. We're here to keep our promise. Stay in your shelters and let us work. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Commander Vax struggled to process what he was seeing. His sensors showed that hundreds, perhaps thousands of these humans were now scattered across the planet's surface. More concerning, they had landed in tactically sound positions, creating a defensive network that would make any ground assault prohibitively expensive. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's directed at us. Put it through. A new voice filled the bridge, different from the colonel's, but equally confident. Zephyrian Fleet, this is Captain Marcus Rodriguez, 3rd Battalion, Terran Marines. You've got 60 seconds to withdraw from Alterian space before we start shooting back. Vex couldn't help but laugh. Their entire force consists of a few thousand infantry scattered across the planet's surface, and they're threatening us? We have 12 dreadnoughts and enough firepower to glass the entire continent. 50 seconds, came the human's voice. Captain, Vex addressed his weapons officer. Target the largest concentration of these humans and demonstrate why threatening the Zephyrian Empire is unwise. Sir, targeting coordinates locked. Plasma cannons charged and ready. 40 seconds. Fire. The Eternal Dominion's main plasma batteries erupted in brilliant beams of superheated energy, lancing down toward the planet's surface. The beams struck their target zone with devastating force, vaporizing several square kilometers of forest and leaving nothing but a glowing crater of molten rock. For a moment, the bridge was silent, as they waited for damage assessment. Then the human voice returned, unperturbed by the destruction that had just occurred. 30 seconds. You missed, by the way. Vex felt his blood chill. His best gunners had fired on stationary targets with perfect sensor locks. How could they have missed? "Sir," the sensor operator called out, his voice filled with disbelief. "The humans, they're not where they're supposed to be. Our scans show they all move position in the 3 seconds between weapon lock and firing." "Impossible. Nothing moves that fast. 20 seconds. Vex looked around his bridge at his crew, seeing his own confusion reflected in their faces. Who were these humans? How had they arrived so quickly? How had they known about the Altarian distress call when no one else in the galaxy had responded? "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving multiple transmissions from across the fleet. All ships are reporting the same thing. The humans somehow knew exactly where to position themselves to avoid our targeting systems." 15 seconds. "How is that possible?" Vex demanded. His tactical officer's cybernetic eye whirred as it processed data. "Sir, there's only one explanation. They hacked our targeting computers in real time, while we were firing." The implications of that statement hit Vex like a physical blow. The Zephyrian Empire had the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. Their encryption was supposed to be unbreakable. If these humans could penetrate their systems so easily... 10 seconds.
Vex grabbed the communications console.
"Unknown human forces, this is Commander Thale Vex of the Zephyrian Empire. We are prepared to negotiate. Time's up." What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. The humans didn't fire massive energy weapons or launch nuclear warheads. Instead, they did something so simple, so primitive, that most advanced species had forgotten it was even possible. They threw rocks. But these weren't ordinary rocks. Using portable mass drivers that they had somehow assembled from their drop pod supplies in the few minutes since landing, the humans began launching projectiles into space. Not at the ships themselves, but at specific points in their orbital patterns calculated to ensure maximum chaos. The first projectile, a chunk of dense planetary stone accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, struck the Redemption's glory amidships. The Zephyrian ship's energy shields, designed to absorb and dissipate energy-based weapons, were completely unprepared for the kinetic assault. The stone punched through the shield matrix like it wasn't there, tearing a hole through the ship's hull that vented atmosphere and crew into the void. "Evasive maneuvers!" Vex shouted, but it was too late. The humans had calculated the orbital mechanics perfectly. More projectiles were already on their way, each one targeting a different ship in the fleet. As the Eternal Dominion shuddered under the impact of a stone traveling at relativistic speeds, Vex realized with growing horror that these humans had not just responded to a distress call, they had planned this entire engagement with a level of tactical sophistication that suggested they knew exactly when and where the Zephyrian fleet would attack. On the planet's surface, Dr. Elena Vaz Altair watched through her laboratory window as the sky filled with the bright flashes of dying starships. The human soldiers moved with mechanical precision, their primitive-looking weapons proving devastatingly effective against technology centuries more advanced than their own. In the shelter beneath the city, the Altarian civilians huddled together, listening to the sounds of battle above. They had sent out a distress call expecting no answer, preparing to face extinction with dignity. Instead, warriors had fallen from the sky. Warriors who fought with a ferocity and intelligence that defied every assumption about military science. As the last Zephyrian ship exploded in the upper atmosphere, its wreckage raining down like burning stars, Colonel Chen's voice once again echoed across the planet's communication network. "Altarian forces, this is Terran Expeditionary Force. The immediate threat has been neutralized, but this is just the beginning. The Zephyrian Empire will not forget this defeat, and they will return in greater numbers. We need to talk." 3 days after the battle, Dr. Elena Vaz Altair stood in what had once been the Altarian Planetary Council chambers, now converted into an emergency command center. The elegant crystalline architecture seemed almost fragile compared to the utilitarian equipment the humans had installed throughout the building. Holographic displays showed defensive positions, supply lines, and sensor readings from across the system. Colonel Sarah Chen stood before a massive tactical display, her weathered features illuminated by the soft blue glow of the projector. Elena had expected someone imposing, given the humans' devastating effectiveness in battle, but Chen was surprisingly small by galactic standards, barely reaching Elena's shoulder. What made her commanding presence undeniable was the way every human in the room moved with purpose around her, each one carrying out their assigned tasks with mechanical precision. "The Empire will respond to this defeat within 2 weeks," Chen was explaining to the assembled Altarian leadership. Our intelligence suggests they'll send a full battle fleet, possibly 300 ships or more. They cannot afford to let this victory go unanswered. Councillor Velshar, the elderly Altarian who served as planetary leader, fidgeted with his ceremonial robes. Colonel Chen, while we are grateful beyond words for your intervention, we must ask the obvious question. How did you know to come? Our distress call was transmitted only 3 days before your arrival, but you would have needed months to travel here from wherever your forces originated. Chen exchanged a glance with a human standing near the communications array, a tall man with cybernetic implants covering half his skull. That's complicated, Counselor. The truth is, we've been monitoring Zephyrian fleet movements for some time. We knew they were planning to attack Kepler 442b long before you sent that distress call.
You were spying on the Empire? Elena asked, unable to hide her curiosity. Among other things?
Chen replied carefully. Dr. Vasaltar, your research into cross-species genetic compatibility caught our attention. Specifically, your work on genetic markers that indicate species compatibility for certain types of enhancement. Elena felt her blood run cold. Her research was classified at the highest levels, known only to a handful of Altarian scientists and the Coalition Council. How could you possibly know about that? And why would humans be interested in genetic enhancement research? Before Chen could answer, the human with the cybernetic implants stepped forward. Because, Doctor, we're not entirely human anymore. He pressed a control on his wrist device, and his appearance began to shift. The cybernetic implants weren't mechanical devices attached to a skull. They were integrated biological systems. His eyes changed color from brown to brilliant silver, and Elena could see patterns of bioluminescence rippling beneath his skin. I'm Captain James Torres, he said, his voice now carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. 3 years ago, I was completely baseline human. Now, I'm something else. Something better. Elena stared in fascination and horror. Genetic manipulation? But the side effects, the rejection rates, are virtually eliminated when you have the right compatibility markers. Chen finished. Your research, Doctor, identified the precise genetic sequences that allow for stable integration of foreign biological systems. The Empire wants that research to create super soldiers. We wanted it for the same reason, but with a different goal. Councillor Velshar's ceremonial robes rustled as he shifted uncomfortably. You've been experimenting on yourselves? Volunteering, Torres corrected. Every enhancement is voluntary, and every volunteer understands the risks. But the results speak for themselves. How do you think we were able to hack Zephyrian military systems in real time? How do you think we calculated those kinetic strikes with such precision? Elena's mind raced through the implications. The enhanced pattern recognition, the increased processing speed, the integration with computer systems. You've turned yourselves into living weapons. We've turned ourselves into what the galaxy needs, Chen said quietly. The Zephyrian Empire has been expanding unchecked for 2 centuries. They've destroyed 17 civilizations, enslaved dozens more. The Coalition talks about sanctions and diplomatic solutions while entire worlds burn. Someone had to be willing to do what was necessary. And what exactly is necessary? Velshar asked. Chen touched a control on the tactical display, and the hologram shifted to show a star map of the local galactic sector. Red markers indicated Zephyrian-controlled systems, blue markers showed Coalition territories, and scattered green dots represented independent worlds like Kepler 442b. We're going to stop them, Chen said simply. Not just here, not just this fleet. We're going to end the Zephyrian Empire's expansion permanently. Elena studied the display, her xenobiologist's mind automatically calculating the odds. Colonel, the Empire controls over 200 star systems. They have a population of nearly 1 trillion beings and a military-industrial complex that spans dozens of worlds. How many humans are there? On Earth, about 8 billion. But we're not just recruiting from Earth anymore. Torres manipulated the display, highlighting several systems that Elena didn't recognize. Over the past 5 years, we've made contact with species that the Empire destroyed but didn't quite finish off. Survivors, refugees, entire populations that were written off as extinct. They're very motivated to help us. You're building an army, Velshar breathed. We're building an alliance, Chen corrected. Species that combine their natural abilities with human tactical doctrine and enhancement technology. The results are impressive. A new voice cut through the discussion. Colonel, we're receiving a transmission from the perimeter sensors. multiple ships entering the system. Elena felt her heart stop. The Empire? No, ma'am, the communications officer replied. Confederation signatures. 3 ships, medium displacement. Chen smiled grimly. Right on schedule. The main display shifted to show 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. They weren't the sleek organic curves of most galactic vessels, nor the brutal angular designs favored by the Zephyrians. These ships looked like someone had taken traditional human engineering and merged it with technologies from a dozen different species. The first ship is the resilient Phoenix, Torres announced. Crew is primarily Saurian refugees from the Altura system, which the Empire glassed 18 months ago. They've been enhanced with improved reflexes and tactical integration systems. The second is the Eternal Defiance, another human added. Cytherian survivors who were supposedly extinct for 3 decades. Their natural ability to interface directly with computer systems makes them incredible pilots once they're properly enhanced. Elena watched in amazement as the 3 ships approached the planet. And the third? Chen's expression grew somber. The third ship is the Last Stand. It's crewed entirely by enhanced humans. Volunteers who underwent the most extreme modifications we've developed. She paused, searching for the right words. They're no longer entirely human, but they're the most effective combat force the galaxy has ever seen. As the ships entered orbit, Elena could see through the chamber's crystal windows that they were deploying some kind of construction systems. Within hours, massive defensive platforms began taking shape in space, using what appeared to be a combination of human engineering and technologies she didn't recognize. Colonel, Councillor Velshar said carefully, we appreciate your assistance, but we must consider the implications of what you're proposing. If we become part of your alliance, we'll be declaring war on the most powerful military force in the galaxy. With respect, Councillor, Chen replied. You declared war on the Empire the moment you sent that distress call instead of surrendering immediately. The only question now is whether you want to fight alone or with allies. Elena studied the tactical display, watching as more defensive installations appeared around the planet. The humans worked with an efficiency that seemed almost mechanical, but she could see the careful planning behind every move. This wasn't just a rescue operation. It was the opening move in a much larger strategy. What exactly are you asking of us? She found herself saying. Torres stepped forward. Your research, Doctor, complete access to your genetic compatibility studies. With that information, we can begin offering enhancement to compatible Altairians. Not just combat enhancements, but improvements to intelligence, reflexes, disease resistance, longevity. You want to change us. We want to give you the choice to change yourselves, Chen corrected. The Empire sees species like yours as weak because you value peace over military strength. But enhanced Altairians with your natural intelligence and intuition, combined with improved physical capabilities, you'd be formidable allies. Elena felt the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. Everything she had learned about genetics told her that the kind of modifications the humans were describing should be impossible. The rejection rates alone should kill anyone who attempted such radical changes, but the evidence was standing right in front of her. There's something else, Chen continued. Our intelligence suggests that the Empire isn't just planning to conquer the independent worlds. They're preparing for something much larger, a campaign against the Coalition itself. The chamber fell silent. The Coalition was supposed to be untouchable, protected by mutual defense treaties and an economic system that made war unprofitable.
If the Empire was planning an assault on Coalition space,
How long do we have? Velshar asked quietly. To decide about joining our alliance? You have until the Empire fleet arrives, Chen replied. To prepare for the Empire's war against the Coalition? Maybe 2 years, possibly less. Elena looked around the chamber at her fellow Altairians. They were scientists, artists, philosophers. They had never wanted to be warriors. But the alternative was extinction, and the humans were offering them a chance not just to survive, but to help protect other peaceful species from the same fate. I'll need to see your enhancement procedures, she said finally. Complete medical records, success rates, long-term effects. If I'm going to recommend that my people undergo genetic modification, I need to understand exactly what we're agreeing to. Chen nodded. Captain Torres will provide you with full access to our medical facilities. But Doctor, understand that once you see what we've accomplished, there's no going back. You'll know too much about our capabilities for us to simply leave you neutral. You're threatening us? I'm being honest with you, Chen replied. This war is bigger than any single planet or species. The Empire has to be stopped. And that requires sacrifices from everyone involved. The question is whether you want to be part of the solution or become another casualty. Elena made her decision. Show me everything. Over the next several hours, Elena toured the human medical facilities that had been established in the capital city. What she saw challenged everything she thought she knew about biology and medical science. The humans had somehow solved the fundamental problem of genetic rejection by creating a symbiotic relationship between the host organism and the introduced modifications. The key, Torres explained as they walked through a laboratory filled with equipment that seemed to blend organic and mechanical components, is not to replace existing biological systems, but to enhance them. We introduce synthetic organisms that work in harmony with natural biology rather than trying to overwrite it. Elena examined the readouts from volunteers who had undergone enhancement. The results were staggering. Increased reflexes, improved pattern recognition, enhanced immune systems, direct neural interface capability, and most remarkably, increased longevity without the cellular degradation normally associated with life extension. The synthetic organisms actually repair cellular damage while providing enhanced capability, she murmured, studying the data. How is this possible? Because we didn't start from scratch, Torres replied. We found the foundation for this technology. He led her to a secured section of the laboratory where a single stasis chamber hummed quietly. Inside, Elena could see what appeared to be a crystalline structure, unlike anything in known biology. This, Torres said quietly, is what we found in the ruins of Proxima 7. The Empire destroyed that world 60 years ago, but they didn't realize what they were leaving behind. Elena stared at the crystalline structure, her mind racing. This is artificial. But the complexity, it would take millions of years to evolve something like this naturally, which means someone made it. Someone with technology far beyond anything we've encountered, and somehow it's compatible with organic life from across the galaxy. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. You're saying that these enhancements aren't human technology at all. We're saying that someone, sometime in the distant past, created a universal biological enhancement system. We've just figured out how to use it. Elena spent the rest of the day reviewing data, speaking with enhanced humans and volunteers from other species, and trying to wrap her mind around what she was seeing. By evening, when she returned to the council chamber, she had made her decision. Councillor Velshar looked up as she entered. Dr. Vassalter, your assessment? The technology is real, Elena said simply. The risks are manageable, the benefits are extraordinary, and the alternatives are extinction or slavery. I recommend we join their alliance. Chen nodded approvingly. There's one more thing you should know, Doctor. The Empire fleet that's coming? It's not just any fleet. It's commanded by Admiral Vos Zektar, the Butcher of Rigel Prime. He's the one who perfected the Empire's scorched earth tactics. When he arrives, he won't just try to conquer this world, he'll try to make an example of it. That will terrify every other species in the sector. Elena felt a chill run through her. She had heard of Zektar, had seen the orbital bombardment footage from Rigel Prime. Nothing had survived on that world, not even bacteria. How many ships is he bringing? Our estimates suggest between 400 and 500 vessels, including planetary bombardment platforms. The chamber fell silent. Even with the defensive installations the humans were building, those odds seemed impossible. Chen continued. But Admiral Zektar has never faced an enemy that could predict his movements, hack his systems, and coordinate with the kind of precision that enhancement provides. He's about to discover that the age of Empire supremacy is ending. Elena looked around at the human officers, seeing the quiet confidence in their faces. They weren't afraid of the approaching fleet. If anything, they seemed eager for the confrontation. When do we begin the enhancement process? She asked. Chen smiled. We already have. Admiral Vos Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Wrath, watching the star system of Kepler 442 grow larger on the main display. His scarred face bore the marks of a warrior who had personally led ground assaults on a dozen worlds, and his cybernetic arm was a souvenir from the resistance on Alturus Prime. He was not a being who tolerated failure, especially the kind of humiliating defeat that had befallen Commander Vex. Status of the advanced scouts, he growled to his tactical officer. No contact for 18 hours, sir. Last transmission indicated they were beginning system reconnaissance. Zektar's remaining organic eye narrowed. Losing contact with scout ships was unusual but not unprecedented. Space was vast and dangerous, and equipment failures could happen. But his instincts, honed by decades of warfare, told him something else was happening. Full sensor sweep. I want to know everything about this system before we commit the fleet. What his sensors revealed defied every tactical manual ever written. The planet's orbital space was filled with defensive platforms that definitely hadn't been there 2 weeks ago. But these weren't standard coalition designs or primitive Altarian constructions. They were something entirely new, built with a hybrid of technologies that shouldn't exist. Sir, his sensor operator reported, voice filled with confusion. The platforms appear to be growing. Clarify. They're expanding in real time, sir. Adding new sections, new weapon systems. It's like they're alive. Zektar studied the tactical display, his strategic mind working through the implications. No known species could construct orbital platforms at that speed, and certainly none that could adapt their design while under construction. Either the intelligence reports about this system were completely wrong, or something fundamental about the strategic balance had changed. Admiral, his communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was calm, professional, and utterly confident. Admiral Zektar, this is Colonel Sarah Chen of the Terran Expeditionary Force. You have one opportunity to withdraw your fleet from this system. Take it. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew the stories about these mysterious humans, but hearing one address the most feared admiral in the Zephyrian fleet with such casual authority was still shocking. Zektar activated his communication system. Colonel Chen, I am Admiral Vos Zektar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. I have 437 ships under my command and authorization to use any means necessary to pacify the system. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences. Admiral, you're operating under outdated intelligence. This system is under the protection of the Terran Confederation. Any attack on Altairean assets will be considered an act of war against all member species of our alliance. Zektar felt a cold anger building in his chest. Your alliance consists of refugees and survivors hiding behind technology you don't understand. I've read the reports from Commander Vex. You have impressive toys, but toys cannot stand against the full might of the Empire. Admiral, let me be clear about what you're facing. In the 2 weeks since your last attack, 3,000 Altarians have undergone enhancement procedures. They now possess capabilities that exceed your best soldiers. Additionally, this system is defended by integrated forces from 17 different species, all of them enhanced, all of them highly motivated to prevent another genocide. The transmission continued, but Zektar was no longer listening to the words. He was studying the tactical display, noting the precise positioning of the orbital platforms, the energy signatures that suggested weapons far more sophisticated than anything in Imperial arsenals. Most concerning, his long-range sensors were detecting movement patterns that indicated a level of coordination between defending forces that should have been impossible to achieve in such a short time. Colonel, he said finally, cutting off the human's explanation, I have spent my career studying the weaknesses of every species in the galaxy. Altaireans are pacifists who break under pressure. Saurians are fierce but undisciplined. Kytherians are brilliant but physically fragile. Your alliance is built on the same flaws that allowed the Empire to conquer these species in the first place. Admiral, you're absolutely right about the weaknesses of individual species, but you're forgetting something important about humans. We specialize in taking broken things and making them stronger than they ever were before. As if summoned by the Colonel's words, Zektar's sensors detected a massive energy spike from the planet's surface. On the main display, he watched as what appeared to be a city-sized structure began rising from the surface, supported by gravitational manipulation technology that shouldn't exist. What in the name of the Empire is that? His tactical officer whispered. The structure continued to rise, revealing itself to be a mobile command platform bristling with weapon systems. But what made Zektar's blood run cold wasn't the firepower, it was the design. He recognized elements of Zephyrian engineering, coalition energy systems, Saurian metallurgy, and technologies from at least a dozen other species, all seamlessly integrated into a unified whole. They haven't just enhanced individuals, he realized out loud. They've enhanced entire civilizations. Dr. Elena Vesalter stood on the command deck of the rising platform, her enhanced vision allowing her to track the approaching Imperial fleet with perfect clarity. The genetic modification she had undergone 3 days earlier had been more extensive than she had initially agreed to, but the results were undeniable. Her mind now processed information at speeds that would have seemed impossible before, and her body had adapted to the stress of rapid acceleration and high-gravity maneuvers. Status of the planetary defenses? She asked Captain Torres, who was coordinating with the orbital platforms through his direct neural interface. All systems operational, he replied. his cybernetic implants glowing softly as data flowed through his enhanced nervous system. The Saurian fast attack squadrons are in position behind the outer moon. Cytherian electronic warfare specialists have established control over 17% of the Imperial fleet's communication systems. Enhanced Altarian tactical units are ready to coordinate the defense grid. Eleanor marveled at the transformation that had taken place. The peaceful world of Kepler 442b had become the center of a military operation that rivaled anything in galactic history. But more than that, the enhancement process had created something unprecedented, a unified force where the natural abilities of different species combined rather than conflicted. "Colonel Chen," she called to the human commander, who stood at the center of the platform's holographic command display, "are you certain the Admiral will attack? He has to see that we're no longer the same easy target his intelligence reports described." Chen smiled grimly. "Doctor, was Altair, Admiral Zektar has built his reputation on being able to crush any opposition through superior firepower and ruthless tactics. He can't withdraw now without admitting that the Empire's doctrine of overwhelming force has failed. His political survival depends on winning this battle, even if it means losing his entire fleet. Especially if it means losing his entire fleet. A glorious defeat is preferable to a strategic withdrawal when your entire career is built on never backing down." Elena's enhanced intellect processed the political implications. The Admiral wasn't just fighting for control of one star system. He was fighting to maintain the psychological dominance that had allowed the Empire to expand unchallenged for 2 centuries. Aboard the Imperial Wrath, Admiral Zektar made his decision. All ships, attack formation. Target the mobile platform first, then the orbital defenses. I want this system reduced to asteroids and radiation. His fleet began to move, 437 ships arranging themselves in the precise formations that had conquered dozens of worlds. Energy shields powered up, weapon systems armed, and point defense networks activated. It was the largest military force the Zephyrian Empire had ever deployed against a single target. "Admiral," his sensor operator called out, "we're detecting additional contacts throughout the system. Multiple fleets moving to intercept us." Zektar studied the new readings. Ships were emerging from asteroid fields, from the dark side of moons, from the electromagnetic shadow of the system's gas giant. The human alliance hadn't just prepared a defense, they had set a trap. "How many ships are we facing?" he asked quietly. "Difficult to determine precisely, sir. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases, and they're using some kind of stealth technology that makes accurate counts impossible. Conservative estimate suggests at least 600 vessels." The bridge fell silent. Even the mighty Imperial fleet had never faced odds like that. "Sir," his communications officer added, "we're receiving targeting data from multiple sources throughout the system. They're not just tracking us, they're sharing targeting information in real time across their entire fleet." Zektar realized with growing horror that he was facing something entirely outside his experience. This wasn't a desperate last stand by a primitive species. This was a carefully orchestrated military operation conducted by an enemy that had prepared for this exact confrontation. All ships' evasive maneuvers, scatter the formation and engage targets of opportunity. But even as he gave the order, Zektar knew it was too late. The enhanced alliance forces had predicted his tactical responses, had planned for every possible move he could make. His ships began taking fire from weapons that seemed to ignore shields, that struck with pinpoint accuracy despite the massive distances involved. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The Imperial fleet, representing the pinnacle of Zephyrian military doctrine, found itself completely outmatched by an enemy that combined the natural abilities of multiple species with enhancement technology that magnified those abilities exponentially. Enhanced Saurian pilots flew attack craft that moved with impossible grace, their natural reflexes boosted to superhuman levels. Cytherian hackers infiltrated Imperial computer systems faster than the security protocols could respond. Enhanced humans coordinated the entire operation with tactical precision that seemed almost supernatural. But it was the enhanced Altarians who proved most devastating. Their natural intelligence, boosted by genetic modification, allowed them to predict Imperial movements with uncanny accuracy. They didn't just react to enemy tactics, they anticipated them, positioning their forces to counterattacks before they were even launched. Admiral Zektar watched his flagship's main display as ship after ship disappeared from his fleet roster. The Imperial Wrath shuddered under repeated impacts from weapons that seemed to phase through his shields. His crew, the most elite soldiers in the Empire, worked frantically to maintain basic systems against an enemy that seemed to know their equipment better than they did. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, his voice tight with disbelief. They're not trying to destroy us completely. They're targeting specific systems. Engines, weapons, communications. They're disabling us. Zektar felt a chill run through him. They're taking prisoners. The implications of that realization were staggering. The Empire had never faced an enemy that wanted to capture Imperial ships intact. Every previous opponent had either fled or fought to the death. But these enhanced alliance forces were conducting their operation with surgical precision, neutralizing threats while preserving as much Imperial technology as possible. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving another transmission from the surface." "Admiral Zektar, you have fought bravely, but the battle is over. Surrender now and your surviving crew will be treated according to the Galactic Convention on Prisoners of War. Continue fighting, and we will be forced to destroy what remains of your fleet." Zektar looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were warriors who had served with him for years, who had followed him into battle against impossible odds. They deserved better than dying in a hopeless fight against an enemy they couldn't defeat. "This is Admiral Vos Zektar," he said finally, his voice heavy with defeat. "I surrender my fleet to your alliance." The silence that followed felt like the end of an era. Colonel Chen's response was immediate and respectful. "Admiral, your surrender is accepted. Prepare to receive boarding parties for the transfer of prisoners and the securing of Imperial technology. Your crew will be treated with honor." As the enhanced alliance forces began boarding the disabled Imperial ships, Elena Vassalter stood on the command platform and contemplated what they had accomplished. The most powerful fleet in galactic history had been defeated, not through superior firepower, but through superior cooperation. Species that had been enemies or strangers had combined their strengths to create something greater than the sum of their parts. "Dr. Vassalter." Colonel Chen approached her. "Your tactical analysis was crucial to our victory. The enhanced Altarian units performed beyond our most optimistic projections." Helena nodded, but her thoughts were already moving beyond the immediate victory. "Colonel, this battle will have consequences far beyond this system. When word reaches the Imperial capital, when they realize that their most experienced admiral has been defeated, they'll mobilize everything they have," Chen agreed. "The Empire can't afford to let this defeat stand unchallenged. They'll come at us with everything they've got. Are we ready for that?" Chen looked out at the captured Imperial fleet, at the enhanced alliance forces securing the ships, at the impossible victory they had just achieved. "Dr. Biko." Vassaltayar, 6 months ago the Zephyrian Empire seemed unstoppable. Today, they learned that there are consequences for the choices they've made. Tomorrow, the rest of the galaxy will learn that the Age of Empire is ending. Elena felt a surge of hope, unlike anything she had experienced before. For the first time in her life, the galaxy felt like a place where cooperation could triumph over conquest, where different species could work together instead of merely coexisting. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Chen replied, "we prepare for the real war." Because Admiral Zektar was right about one thing. This alliance is built on species that were broken by the Empire. But he was wrong about what that means. We don't break again. We help others heal. And together, we're going to make sure that no other world suffers the way so many have suffered under Imperial rule. As the enhanced alliance forces continued their work, as captured Imperial technology was analyzed and integrated into their growing capabilities, as representatives from dozens of liberated species began arriving to join the fight, Elena realized that she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. The Age of Empire was indeed ending. But the Age of Cooperation, of species working together as equals rather than conqueror and conquered, was just beginning. And somewhere in the depths of space, other Imperial fleets were receiving word of Admiral Zektar's defeat. And the Empire was beginning to understand that they now faced an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. An enemy that didn't just fight back but fought smart. An enemy that could turn their own strengths against them. An enemy that refused to let evil triumph, no matter what the cost.